The following content is meant for educational and entertainment purposes only. Any opinions expressed in this program are strictly of the individual speaking then. Filmed in South Fellini Studios in South Philadelphia. This is a Robservations extended discussion. Now here's your host, the man with the repayment plan, Rob.
Welcome to Robservations Extended Discussion, Episode 1, where we're going to get into the story of Johnny Ring and the Captain's Sword and the different pieces of art that it's represented within. First, we're going to get into some business, and I think we got a comment. Ike, how we looking on that comment?
Yeah, we got a comment from RDX on YouTube saying your Robservations are 10 out of 10. We'd like to thank them.
Thank you. Appreciate the kind words. And anyone else out there, if you want to have your comment read on Robservations Extended Discussion, make sure to comment. And we're going to keep our eye out for the stuff that we like. So if you're a little nasty, you can keep that energy to yourself. As a neurodivergent creator, I don't really care about, I'm sure my pronunciation might be off sometimes. I might stumble here and there. But, hey, this is schoolwork, and we're getting an A. So let's go.
Definitely.
So next, I'd like to get into some of the things that I left out of the short form video. Within that, my goal was to keep that video very specific on the statue, the truth and the lie, or the truth and the myth, whatever you want to call it. And there's just so much to this story that it could get messy. So I'm going to try and stay very contained and organized, but it's going to we're going to get off the rails here at some point. All right, so Russell Conwell, he was in Yale learning to be a lawyer when the Civil War broke out, and he was inclined to try and help gather new volunteers to join the Northern Union side. And through his effort, he was able to get a whole infantry of Massachusettsians, if that's what they're called, to volunteer. And this volunteer army was basically like a pickup game of basketball. It was like any guy who wanted to fight just signs up, and because they were a Massachusetts volunteer army, they never left the North. They didn't see much action. It was very minor detail. They were basically protecting Massachusetts in case there was any invaders that came up that way. After that successful first operation for Conwell, he was promoted to captain of Massachusetts Heavy Artillery, which, I assume was things like cannons and maybe Gatling guns, stuff like that. I haven't actually looked into the specifics, but his position now became captain of this crew, and that's when Johnny Ring enlists and becomes a private in his Heavy Artillery. During his initial stint in the volunteer army, Conwell was known as the boy captain of the Civil War. He was the youngest captain, and for that, he should still be recognized. He was young, right? Like, he was 19 when he became a captain. If any one of us could think of where we were when we were 19, I don't think we would say that we should have been a captain of, like, a military operation. But Conwell, he had a dream. He dreamed big, and that's obvious, but, we'll get to the good stuff, I guess. So once John enlists, Conwell takes his heavy artillery down to Newport, North Carolina, and they're stationed there while they wait for, enemy advancements. They're just positioned at this point in North Carolina. And this seems to be where things go wrong with Conwell. It seems like he got a little full of himself maybe when he was up in the volunteer position, and thought maybe he could get away with more than he really was allowed to get away with. So they make their way to North Carolina, and on February 1st, John Q. Ring is promoted to corporal, and it was the next day that the ambush happened. So it doesn't seem like he had a long time to get to enjoy that promotion, but he was not an orderly servant. He was not even a child. A lot of the stories about Conwell and this myth, he puts Johnny Ring in this boy position, like he's a little kid. And it's weird because they're the same age. They went to the same school. They listed the same occupation, which was salesman, and it wasn't common for people to have that position. So came from the same area. There's a lot of weirdness going on there. I don't have the answers. I know that Joseph Carter, in his investigation of everything, he actually started speaking to some of John Ring's closest relatives. Mary and Mort Ring, I believe were their name. In some of the correspondence with Joseph Carter and the Ring family, they mentioned that they knew the truth about John Ring's death. They knew there was no heroic, running across the bridge. And they always questioned Conwell's motive. But because Conwell was in a position of, status, his word was always held over the words of others. The night before the ambush, Conwell was off walking between different camps. And when he had come back, he was questioned about where he was. And at that time, he tried playing off this story to like one of the higher up military guys, saying that on his way back from his other camp, that it was a Kennedy Mills, where he had some of his men stationed, he had seen the opposition, the Southern Confederate forces, sneaking in the bushes. And while he was standing, he said he got shot at, and it hits a pocket watch in his pocket. And if it wasn't for the pocket watch, he wouldn't have survived. That was never proven. The next morning, the higher-up military official tells Conwell, hey, go out with some of these men, make sure that go see if you can find the guys you thought you saw. When they were out looking, they never found anyone. There was, within Confederate notes, there's no mention of an operation that they had guys walking up there. So realistically, Conwell, it's not looking good for you, bud. With that in mind, they're out looking for the people Conwell said were out there. They didn't want them to be in the home of someone that maybe they were hiding. So they took military members from the crew, sent them out. As they're looking, they find nothing, and Conwell kind of just takes off. No one knows why. Supposedly they heard the sounds of the ambush, and he said that he needed to go pick up pay for his men from New Bern, and he just leaves. And he makes his way to New Bern, where he's found by another military commander up there. And while the military commander heard about the ambush, and he knows Conwell's supposed to be there, he's like, why aren't you there? Conwell, in the military official records, it says Conwell could produce no valuable response as to why he was there and not in Newport, where his men needed him. So that's where he's placed under court-martial, and he never sees his men again. Johnny Ring would go on, I think, maybe even to be captured, and passes away in internment camp. So I'm sure Conwell felt bad about that death, especially considering the fact that his sister ends up marrying a Ring. I don't know if it's pre or post this whole incident, but he's somehow related to Johnny Ring, and whether that was before or after, I'm sure it was a big strain on that family relationship. All right, so let's get into the art, the stuff that most of the people came to this episode probably to hear about. And first, I kind of want to do an honorable mention to the sword, something that exists in the Special Collection Research Center at Temple University. I had the great opportunity of holding this sword and taking some pictures, which you'll probably see right here, right now. It's a beautifully crafted sword. It definitely is not some prop. Like when you hold it, you feel like you're holding something of great value. I mean, it's specifically historical. So the film is produced in 1921, 4 years before Conwell passes away. And it's hard to tell anything about the film because there's very little information that exists about it. Even within the university, there's only one thing, which you'll see right here, that actually shows that it existed. In terms of any, film cell, like anything like that, nothing exists. There's no scripts, there's no storyboards, there's nothing related to this production, which as a media studies and production student at Temple University, that kind of upsets me because I'd like to know the history of this film, regardless of the lie, truth, myth, whatever behind it. I still feel like it has significant historical value for Philadelphia, Temple, and all that. And I wish we had something more to talk about with it. Something I do want to point out is on this one frame, this little photo of Johnny Ring crossing the fiery bridge. I swear I've seen this somewhere before. Not like in the film itself, but I don't know if it was like Turner Classic Movies or somewhere that had like old film libraries and they made an interstitial, but this one still of him racing across the bridge, it's just something in my memories being triggered. If there's anyone out there that can help figure this out, I don't know, maybe we can find a copy of this film and make it non-lost media or remove its claim to lost media. The only proof of the film that we can actually access today, thankfully, is through the Library of Congress. Within the Library of Congress, there is a copyright of the film which spells out the synopsis and basically the gist of the story. And then there's some magazine articles where the Temple Production Company was trying to get people to rent the film reels so they could show it in their neck of the woods. Some of the claims that I've seen online and other places said that the film was destroyed because it was a fire risk, and I don't know about that. It just feels too weird with what we're seeing now and the truth of Johnny Ring, and it just felt like someone knew that it needed to be kind of erased. But now you create an issue where Library of Congress has the copyright and we have all this other stuff going on, and we're kind of left with, our hands in the air of like what happened. The next piece of art that was known to exist was a mural. This mural was located in Minton Hall, which a lot of Temple students may know is one of the main buildings. It's where some of the things like the Career Center is located and some of the nicer events are held. It's a beautiful building, and it became known that this mural was an eyesore. No one liked it. I don't know if they knew the truth yet. I don't know what led to the exact removal of this mural, but I found a note in Professor Carter's research papers that he actually had written the person who had it removed, and he had complimented them and said, "Great job removing that, hoax on our campus. There's about 2 more," and he was referring to the Johnny Ring statue, which we know at that point he was already well invested in. So after the mural and the statue were created, it turns out that a radio play is created externally from Temple University, and it kind of puts what we can expect the film to be into audio, portrayal. And within that, if anyone wants to watch that, it's actually available on YouTube. It was uploaded last year, so interesting timing there. I don't know who did it, but thank you, because it allows us to kind of understand the story that was being portrayed here and what it meant to the people hearing this, right? And the last piece of art that I found about this story was a children's book written by one of Russell Conwell's own granddaughters. I know that because when I was looking at the book in our Special Collection Research Center, there's actually a handwritten note on the cover that says, "Thanks to the university that was created by my grandfather." So in that children's story, it's interesting again. There's a lot of claims, but that story, which was, I think, released in the 70s, was the first time you have actual admittance to Conwell being in military prison. Some of the last frames, which you'll probably be seeing here, show Conwell sitting in military prison, receiving a sword. It's all illustrations. We don't have photographs, but they knew there was more to this truth. So this seems like an attempt to share the truth, but it still continues because it says Conwell talks to Lincoln and goes on to keep continuing the fight in the Civil War, which, if you watch my next short form video, it's going to be a doozy. John and Russell were actually related through marriage. I don't know when this marriage exactly happened in terms of the scheme of things, but the signer of the statue, Russell Conwell Cooney, his mother is Russell Conwell's sister, and his father is the cousin of Johnny Ring. And it's hard to tell how that happened, but it's just unique because Russell Conwell Cooney, who had involvement with the statue and was an important person within Temple, kind of let this exist. And I don't even know if he mentioned his relation to Johnny Ring throughout, the people who talked to him about these stories. I know he admitted it to Joseph Carter because there's some correspondence there. I want to do a special thanks to finish this out right now first off, Temple Libraries and the Special Collections Research Center, thank you so much for doing what you do. I could not have access to all this stuff if you guys were not taking care of that information. And, you know, despite what's going on with this story, I feel like there is a lot to be said that we do have proof, and, you know, there are people working on at least keeping that safe, and thank you for that. On top of that, Joseph Carter, Professor Emeritus, if I'm saying that correctly. I'm sorry you were a journalism professor, not a history professor, because then maybe they take you seriously. Or at least that's how it feels, in my opinion. I want to thank my friend Jay Myers, who's a history major himself, not at Temple, different school, but he's actually the one who looked into the claims from Agnes Burr for me. I had really no patience to do that, but he was more than willing. And Jay, thank you so much. Appreciate your help. And W.H. Pohorsky. He's an independent researcher who I'll get into on some of the upcoming content. He offers some very valuable things. His involvement in the story is very unique, too, because he stumbles upon it in a completely random way. And he's actually researching it at the same time Joseph Carter is, but they never meet each other. He's actually a Confederate sympathizer. He comes from the South. Pohorsky became involved with the whole thing when he was doing some metal detecting in North Carolina and actually stumbled upon the site that the ambushed camp was at, because it was like burned, and he was like, what's this? It's not in the history books. And through researching it on his own, he stumbles upon the story of the captain being dishonorably discharged, which caught his interest. As he looked into it, he realized, oh wow, this guy is a historical figure and no one's talked about this. So he did a book that has transcriptions of the entire court-martial event, all the paperwork that came out in the military department after the fact. It's all there. Thank you, William. Thank you, Joseph Carter. Even though you both are not with us anymore, you offered me so much to learn from, and for that, thank you so much. On top of that, thank you to South Fellini for letting me film in their podcast studio. Appreciate that. And also, thank you, Ike, for filling in last minute and doing a great job as my camera switcher. And yeah, how do you feel about that?
Feel great. I have lots of questions.
Is there anything in particular that you think that other students or just Temple community public might want to hear?
Yeah, so I think coming as an out-of-state student, coming here, one of the first things I learned about Temple is just the founder and how he had this church and he took in community members and he gave them night classes, and that's why we're the Temple Owls, because he slowly taught them, and they were able to get degrees and better jobs. But learning more and more about kind of just all this, I'm even just wondering about that. I'm wondering about how the children's book is how we learn that he was actually in jail, the way I think his family came out with that. It's just a lot of like trying to figure out what is true, what is false, and when the university finds out why like something isn't right, why did they choose to take it down? Like the mural, for instance, like why did they choose to take that down?
Well, first off, something big and that's not mentioned in many historical books about Conwell is that Temple was not the first college that he founded. He was actually involved with a college in Philadelphia called the Neff College of Pathology and Speech, something like that. He was a founding member and the president, I think, of that school for its duration while it was open, up until his death at least. And there's proof of that in Carter's work, which, you know, another thing that the university just doesn't acknowledge. Like, yeah, he was helping people at the Grace Baptist Church by teaching them here and there, but he was also kind of doing the same thing at Neff College, which doesn't exist. There's very little information on it, but Carter has correspondence from the school saying, like, yeah, Conwell was on our board of directors. He signed the charter. He was there. He was part of it. And, yeah, it's just part of the history that's not talked about. I think one of the things that keep coming to my mind, a lot of people want to promote Conwell as, like, he brought college to North Philadelphia. Philadelphia was going to get a publicly funded institution regardless of Conwell. That's just going to happen. It's Philadelphia. It's one of the biggest cities. He just put himself in a position where they became the like best option for a Philadelphia public institution. And realistically, the people that have worked at Temple have done a good job at trying to maintain the university. It's not all sour just because of this one person. Everything from the past is like tainted in some way like this. It's more the fact of what we're doing about it today and how we're leaving it for the future generations, because realistically, if this was taken care of when Joseph Carter finished his book, if the statue was removed, we would not be discussing this today. No one would be having this discussion, and what would that look like? You know, it'd be a lot more off my mind. I'd probably be doing a online persona series about video games or movies or something, but no, I'm here doing history, which I'm having a good time, actually, if I'm going to be honest. But some minor things about the statue that kind of maybe didn't get into too much. The statue was created by Boris Bly, if that's how you say it. He also did the bust of Conwell by his grave, and he was the, I think the original dean, maybe one of the deans of Tyler School of Art. And yeah, in the statue, he left these little things that are very questionable because, you know, there's a lad who didn't die etched into the one side, which you don't see right away. And that whole saying, the boy who lived, like, what's he trying to say, you know? But realistically, it's just, you know, some catchphrase that I think Conwell Cooney wanted to keep for himself, and it was included in the statue. There's some dates. The dates are very questionable. Even Joseph Carter questioned the dates of the statue. It seems like they're commemorating the years of the Civil War, which, whatever. And then also something that came to my attention, the middle finger on the hand that's holding the Bible. Why is it long? Why does it look like it's flipping off to everyone that looks at the statue? It looks like it was added even, like, at some point, like they just wanted to add this finger. Not the university, but Boris, maybe, I don't know. Maybe he was tired, because also another weird discrepancy about the statue, it says Johnny Ring on the statue with a Y, and then the text of the story on the side, it's Johnny with an I and an E. So there's a lot of questions of, like, what the heck, Temple? I forgive you, Conwell. Ike forgives you.
No.
It was a different era, and you made an error, but we need to fix it today. And I hope that the university understands that, like, as difficult as it's going to be, you know, it's necessary for the future. And with that, I'm going to end this episode of Robservations Extended Discussions. Thanks for watching. Ike, take us away.